101. So, microphones, please. Cell phones, off. And everybody else looks like they're ready. All right. We don't have, do we have John back there? Or are we on our own?
We're just doing audio recording
okay.
today.
That's fine. All right. We get the gavel. It's 101. Today is Tuesday, September 24th, 2019. And this is a work session for the budget. We're going to discuss the fire department and general fund today. I guess it doesn't matter which order we do them in.
Probably fire department would be better.
Since he's here and he can,
get them out.
in case you have to leave, that's probably better. And we can have more time to beat up on Lois.
Yeah.
Roll call, Randy?
Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Trustee Everson.
Here.
Trustee Marks.
Person.
Treasurer Johnson.
Yeah.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Duran.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, Assistant Chief Rob Cochran, and Accountant Lois Stonehouse.
Thank you. All right. Do you have anything you want to present in the beginning? You just want to answer questions, or before we? I'm guessing we all have questions. I do, but
well, probably the most expedient use of time is when we address board questions first, and then we can walk through whatever else you want to walk through.
Okay. Anybody have anything pressing, real quick?
I've got a number of things checked in that.
Yeah, I do too, in circles. Go ahead. Why don't you start, Ernie?
On buildings and grounds.
Are you looking? Are you looking at the budget or the
On
narrative?
the budget. The narrative on the budget.
Narrative on the budget. Building and grounds.
Under administration?
Account 206, 250, 265 building and grounds, number 7, on 728. I did have a question. They said equipment replacement, $350. What are we talking about? You said filter lights, sprinklers, etc. It's $350. When you start talking about lights and sprinklers, $350 don't go very far.
That's $150 less than last year.
Well, I think what you're talking about there is just normal wear and tear items. They're projecting just normal wear and tear items for bulbs and filters, and sprinkler heads if you need to do a sprinkler head, that kind of thing. It's an estimate.
It's the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, it's just the day-to-day small stuff.
Okay.
Took me a minute to find it.
Same with 930 repair and maintenance, just the maintenance, day-to-day, month-to-month stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not. Well, you're going to possibly have to replace, some fire extinguishers or something like that. But I mean, it's day-to-day stuff that's routine. If you look back, let's see, that's 930 under building and grounds. Go back here.
$3,500 less.
Well, but one of the things we're trying to do here is to try and get back to typical of what's happening, based on factual information from prior years in this building.
And even when you go back to the recommendations in the action detailed in that under 930.
Okay, John.
I'm on 206-8. Expenditures.
Yeah, if you go back historically, it's run between 1,000 and 5,000 for the last 3 prior years. So you're looking at that saying, we're in this building, we've got a little history now in terms of what is actually happening. So we dropped that from 8,000 down to 4,500.
Right, but we've also through June this year we're at 5,100.
Yes.
So it's kind of rolling the dice as to where we're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay.
Is the flushing of the hydrant in there? Is that
Hydrant.
hydrant flushing?
No, not in there.
Okay. Is that public works or is that fire?
It's both.
Both.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's part of that's part of the public water supply.
Comment, I think it's fine this year. Wasn't there something done to the garage door on the building?
Yes.
And that may have been a few $1,000s.
If we're looking at painting the overhead door, that's a different color. Also possibly painting the man doors. And it also includes backflow preventer and fire suppression maintenance. Some required items that we have to do throughout the year as well as the alarm system.
As a for instance, we just had an incident where there's repair being done right now in the generator. There was an unanticipated issue. Some piece of foreign debris got in and broke some of the plastic fan blades on the generator, so that's being replaced, as well as some damage to the radiator on it. So those are things that just kind of happen.
And the other thing on hospitalization, you've indicated we don't know yet, and the figure we have, is this the
Predicated on-
projected one, or this?
That is your actual 2018. As you look in the general fund, you'll see in the general fund, and we'll get to that, I have funds set aside for all township departments in the general fund.
Okay.
Because right now, we're predicating it based on 10% increase. We don't know for sure what it is. We're pretty sure it's going to be double digit. We don't know if it's going to be 10 or 15 or what, but we have funded at least up to 10% increase.
But we won't know until the end of October, the
It's
actual.
going to be mid to late October before we actually get good figures.
Because that's what I'm looking at, hospitalization, and I know you had said that we didn't have the figures. I was just looking at this 28,000.
Yeah, that's reflective of this year's rate.
Okay. And on the pension, that's including the new projected employees or not?
No, that's predicated on this year's. The funds that I have set aside for 2020, I can tell you right now where those are at. If you want to look, they're in the general fund under...
But this I'm talking about pension as far as the fire department.
I'm saying, no, it's everything that's in the budget, whether it's wages or benefits, is predicated on 2019 figures.
Okay.
Okay, now what I've done in the general fund, under professional services, let's see.
So we can move it.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure I understood.
Let me get it here. You look under the general fund, under Township Board, under miscellaneous. That's page 101-1. Right at the bottom, you'll see $52,947.
Yes.
And then the notation after it. That's where all of those increases are. There's $33,700 for compensation changes, $19,232 for health insurance and reserve for all the departments. So when we get those actual numbers, it will be allocated out of that fund.
When you say all departments, you're including
Fire, public works, everything, all of our staff. So it's all in one place, so when we get those actual costs, we can transfer out of that fund to cover those costs to the individual budgets.
Then we'll have an updated budget for all of them.
Correct, once that occurs, and that won't be until at the earliest mid-October.
Okay.
So everything that you see for wages and benefits in the budget sheets is predicated on this year, 2019.
Okay, that pretty well answers most of my questions on that too. So. The only question I have is on page 206-4, under 860. When you look down on the National Fire Academy, new fire chief. Do we have a new fire chief, or is this carryover from last year?
That language is carryover from last year, but the reason the chief isn't here today is because he's at training today in Frankenmuth.
No, I'm just looking at here where it says new fire chief. I just wondering.
Yeah.
If I may, she forgot to remove the new fire chief, but I am actually scheduled to attend the National Fire Academy in February, and that's what that's there for.
Yeah, but Dan is not here today because he's at a training in Frankenmuth right now that was previously scheduled before this session was set.
No, I just looked at new fire chief. I said, do we have something I don't know about? Okay. I'll let someone else talk.
Who else has got questions? Anybody?
Sure.
Dan or Dave, you must have one or two.
Under revenues, page 2608. And it is, it shows $157,781 towards equipment replacement. I assume that's the millage?
That's the millage, yes. 2.6.
Other than in net effect at the end of the budget, where does that money go?
That money is going into a separate account that Lois is maintaining. That's that .6 mils, Lois, that was levied.
Yes.
So that doesn't show in these budget sheets.
Why, okay, so that's my question. Why doesn't it show in the budget sheet that it's being transferred out to someplace?
Oh, I believe it does.
It just shows up in net effect at the end.
Yeah, and that, at the very end,
2609-06-9, it just shows it. I thought it did not. It's not there.
now, at the very last under net effect, it's just identifying that that's being captured elsewhere outside of the budget.
Yeah.
157,781 apparatus replacement fund.
206-11.
Yes, and that will go into a separate designated fund.
Okay, that was my question. It doesn't show it being transferred out exactly. It just shows it as a net effect. Like we got money lounging around that we don't have anything to do with.
It's not transferred out, it's part of the fund balance.
Yeah.
Be the balance
But
sheet.
it's specifically
Right.
identified on the balance sheet for that.
But what you're saying is it doesn't identify where it's going to be used.
Right.
Yeah.
But
No, and that's why I put in the budget sheets for you under parentheses that it's being pulled out of the budget, captured for the purpose of the equipment replacement. That's a separate item, separate line item on the balance sheet.
Yeah, we can't use it for anything other than equipment.
Well, it won't be there. It's going to go out right away. It's going to be captured out of the budget as soon as it's collected.
So when you say on the balance sheet, we'll have that on
You'll see it. Yeah, it'll be similar to what you do with your restricted funds.
the, right.
Let's see, page
But
20.
it does have to be reflected as revenue. So that's why.
Yeah, I understand why it has to be reflected as revenue. I guess what I was wondering is why it just shows it as sitting there and under net effect, which means it's just a surplus in the budget. It doesn't show it going anyplace, so.
That's how you have to show it, in the revenue and expenditures.
And then it's
Yeah.
captured.
Yeah.
Same thing as on the,
I must be missing something.
Oh,
well, no, it's the same thing as on the public works side. You see that money coming in and then it goes to retained earnings, which is on Ernie's sheet that you see. Where he
Now
puts it
we're
in.
arriving at my problem.
oh.
When it goes to retained earnings, it just seems like it sets there.
Well, I mean,
it's not designated for anything.
Well, but he does have restricted funds in there that are designated, that can't be used, basically. And it's the same thing that's occurring with this. It's being pulled for a specific future use, but it has to be shown on the revenue and it's shown as a transfer out. It doesn't go to out of the general fund. When you see a transfer out, it's going to township improvements, let's say. This is not going somewhere else within the budget. It's being pulled directly out of the budget, put into a separate fund specifically to be drawn on for the equipment use. And that has to be by board action to draw that.
Okay. I'm not sure it still makes sense, but okay.
It's kind of the hamstring that we have with the chart of accounts and the way we have to do the accounting at the township level. You'll see it again. You'll see it in the audit. You'll see it as an identified fund when the audit is done.
Well, I guess that's what I was wondering. Sooner or later, we're going to see a
Yeah.
fund that's identified for equipment replacement, and that balance is going to grow year after year by whatever amount of tax dollars we pull into that.
Right, and whatever the board then authorizes to be pulled out of that for use for purpose.
It could be a notation on monthly financials, couldn't it? Because we're showing the
Balance sheet.
no, yeah, it'd be there, but I was trying to think how we could have it, how we could see it, see what the number is on the
You look on
page
your
that
August
Ernie gives us. the one that goes this way, that's got all the accounts, it's got the restricted, and
But I see what Dave is saying.
just
is
make an addendum at the bottom.
The rank and file public looks at the budget and says, well, you got 157, 781 sitting in the fire department.
Exactly. And it doesn't show it going anyplace.
So how would we have to show it as revenue in the budget, because it's revenue coming in.
I understand that you have to show it as revenue, but shouldn't it be shown as being transferred to an account? And it would be an account that's equipment replacement?
But it's not an account that's in the budget, and that's where we run into the issue. It's not something that's in the budget that we can transfer, to some other use. It goes to.
It can be, you can be transferring it someplace else as long as you show that it gets transferred to that place. I mean, it doesn't have to be in the budget, you can show it transferred to any place.
We could add an extra line on the
Yeah,
bottom
I
and
guess
say,
under transfer out.
yeah,
I don't know
apply
what
towards the
number it would be.
retained or the fund balance
I'm not sure
special
what.
account. If you want to add another line, you can do that.
Can you do some
Yeah.
research and see what we would
Yeah,
what we
sure.
would designate that is under the chart of accounts as a transfer out?
Well, it's gonna have a number.
Well, I guess what
Anyway.
I'm wondering is when it finally goes someplace, it goes into retained earnings, right?
It goes into
Fund
a
balance.
designated fund in the fund balance, yes.
What's that fund designated?
Well, it's the equipment.
Can't we show it as transferred out to that fund?
Well, we need a number though, so that's what Lois is gonna have to research and see what you would, in the chart of accounts, what
Okay.
you would number that
Yeah.
and refer to it as. And then, yeah, we can add it under
Yeah.
transfer out. The only reason I did it this way is so we have a track of it and you see it, basically, because it's the first year that we've had that revenue come in.
Yeah, the only thing that concerns me is you see it, but you don't see it going in place.
Okay.
Which makes it look like you've got some money just kind of laying around, but we want more.
Okay,
Yeah, we can do that.
I'm just gonna add to mine here, create fund.
The next question is on page 2608. It's Department 265, account 930.
608,930.
And I was wondering what the disparity is between the request and the recommended.
What page, Dave?
It's 265, account 930, repairs and maintenance,
2068.
2068.
And then down on expenditures under 930.
Oh, that repair and maintenance?
Yeah,
That's what we were just talking about on Ernie's question.
okay, and
That's the miscellaneous items in the fire department that we've now got a decent track on. Lois had mentioned that the increase this year, the jump up to 5,100 is because of some door repairs. So we're projecting that 4,500 would be enough for 2020. We don't, unless something occurs that we're not anticipating.
okay.
That's why the reduction there, and that was Chief and I, that's my recommendation, 4,500, based on what our discussions were. Department's still requesting 8,000. And what I've done is gone back and looked the last 3 years.
So you're doing historical data?
Yeah, I'm doing historical. Because we've been in the building now for those 16, 17, 18.
Okay.
Is it possible that something else might happen? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's possible, but right now we're projecting 4,500. The things that we're talking about right now, some of the tuck pointing and things such as that on the building, we're going to be pushing for those to be warranty issues in the construction.
Don't get me wrong, I'm an advocate of historical data versus, that's what it was last year, but I was just wondering.
Yeah, that's why.
On page 206-10, well, let's see, it's account 930, under department and vehicles.
That's
It's the notation that is shift to the Marquette city.
Yeah, that was, remember these?
Yeah, I know.
The budgets were put together before you took your action at your last meeting, we're anticipating that that's potentially going to be 10 to 20% less now that we've got that agreement in place. I'm sorry, it's not quite in place yet. It goes to the city commission at their next meeting for approval. But we're anticipating that it will be approved.
So that'll be adjusted.
So that can be adjusted.
Is that budget actually going to adjust down then?
Well, we will have one quarter. We'll have the last quarter of this year as experience, and we'll go back and take a look at those figures.
Is the travel and boarding and everything else included in that figure? Is that included someplace else?
Nope,
It's in that
included
figure.
in that figure.
Okay.
So we will have the last quarter of this year prior to the budget going into effect in January to go back and look at what actually occurred with the city doing the maintenance compared to what we projected and then adjust the budget.
Okay. And the last question was about the breakdown for income versus expenses on the ambulance. Everybody keeps clamoring for it. And I tried to dig it out of there, but I didn't really find it.
That's not in the budget because we're not through the year yet, but
I sent that out
Yeah, it's not in the
a couple
budget.
weeks ago.
Yeah, it's not in the budget though, right, Lois? No.
It's not part of the budget sheets, no.
hang on. I got it here. And I know Treasurer Johnson had asked for it as well, but Lois had put this figure together. Gross revenues, this is through August, I believe, correct, Lois?
Yep.
I think this was through August. So gross revenues are $41,156. Billing costs were $28.75. Intercept fees were $5,250. Supplies were $64.43, and vehicle maintenance was $1,118 for a net revenue of $25,470 through August.
Did you not get that email, Dave? Do you remember seeing it?
Copy. So through August, we have 24,000, almost 25,000 to the good.
Yeah, I sent it to everybody. I can resend it.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I already have it.
Okay.
Miraculously, it's appeared.
But also that net amount also has to be looked at as far as replacing the equipment too, which is the ambulance.
Yeah, ultimately, yes, and that whatever the revenue that's generated out of the ambulance is going to end up going into that same account that the millage is going into because the ambulance is a piece of the equipment.
Well, if we have a plus side on the same amount that we're going to apparently have this year, it should pay for a new piece of
Correct.
equipment.
That's correct. And we are looking, in all honesty, the chief and I have been researching and looking for a replacement, not a replacement, but an additional ambulance because we are going to be in a spot where one's going to be down and we'll have to have another for backup. So we're looking. We're not on the same page of what we're looking for, but we're both looking.
It's looking a little higher than the manager is.
I mean, obviously, the department would prefer to have a new ambulance or a demo or something like that, but I think for the time being, until this stabilizes and we have a couple of more years under our belt, that something similar to what we currently have is going to be sufficient.
And I
I
think
think 40 to 50,000.
How much you spend would be determined by how much you've made.
Correct, and that's I'm looking in the 40 to 50,000 range for the second.
Randy's looking for a pickup.
No,
Throw him in the back.
I'm looking for basically the same thing we've got, only not a diesel.
Yeah.
Pretty
Only
much.
not what?
Not a diesel.
Oh, why is that?
Diesel now, with all the pollution control stuff on them, they're turning into maintenance nightmares.
Yeah.
A lot of maintenance.
I'm glad I'm not the only one to come to that conclusion. That's why I got rid of the one I had.
You just don't run them long enough and hard enough. A diesel, you have to run them good.
Well, diesels are made to be
Right.
workhorses. I mean, they're made, and we're talking short run, short runs all the time, relatively short runs. We're not doing long distance transports.
Right.
All that kind of stuff where diesels really shine, and that's where you get your real economy, with them. So, from the standpoint of replacement, I think we're much further ahead to look at a gas unit.
We really don't need that low end torque like you do with the bigger trucks. Neither.
And that's all my questions.
Okay. Who's next? You answered two of mine.
Just added to create a new account for that transfer out.
My question to Randy earlier was that the savings that we're projecting for the maintenance, not to take that into consideration, because we don't know how the rest of it's gonna go. They'll say, oh, we're gonna save 10%, 20%, whatever, just leave it alone until we see what it's
Well,
gonna
and
actually
that's-
come up with.
Yeah, and that's why that's there. We left it at the 35,000. We had a lot of discussion about that. We decided to leave it there and then do an analysis at the end of this year and see what this last quarter did in terms of actual estimated savings, and then annualize that to amend this budget. And again, whatever reduction there is from that will be going to either the building principal or to the equipment fund.
Well, not to be too sarcastic, but the reason I brought the question up is because it was going to be a big savings, and then nothing showed up in the budget, and that was part of the chief's sales pitch, was how much money we're going to save.
And again, we are based on just downtime alone and travel time. We're projecting probably somewhere between 10 and 20% on that.
No, I understand. It's much like the transfer out. It was just a where did it go question.
Oh yeah, and again, I did not have any idea of how we would be structuring that other than on the balance sheet, but we certainly can put an additional transfer outline item on there that would identify somehow that it's going to that reserve fund and not show up as a net effect.
There's a couple more manager recommendations that are less, well, actually one of them is higher than.
I guess I do want to make one more comment, and this might answer the question. If you just go up to a little bit further up on that same page under firefighting, 339,930, repairs and maintenance, that 5,500 is going to be either reduced or eliminated by an item that I'll let Assistant Chief Cochran talk about, the grant that we were just awarded Monday.
I'm guessing 5,500.
Yeah, it was good. We were estimating $5,500 for some minimal repairs and maintenance to the self-contained breathing apparatus, bottles and vests.
As of Monday, we were notified that we've been awarded an AFG grant that Mike Gregorich wrote for approximately
$133,600, of which our share is about $6,500.
That will replace our aging SCBA or our air packs.
All of them.
At the end of the lifespan.
Say that again now? 133, but we only get 65?
No. Our cost is $65, 5% match.
Okay.
So it'll cost us $6,500, but it will replace all of our bottles, and all of our harnesses, and masks with the new bottles, bigger bottles, and also upgrade the air trailer to be able to accommodate the bigger bottles.
So are we going to do a wholesale replacement, or?
Yep, all of them.
At least.
Yeah, we didn't think we had a prayer of getting that grant because we've done so well previous years in AFG's Aid to Firefighters grants. We were totally surprised when we received the notice that we've been awarded the full amount that we asked for.
Way to go, Mike. Did he?
Yeah.
Did good.
His narration, I'm sure, has a lot to do with that too. However he put it in there.
So this 5,500, we basically just start picking away at the worst of the worst, and now we're going to be in a position to replace them all. So
There still will be an every 2 year
every two
fee
years.
because we have to have them inspected and certified every 2 years. They have to perform go tests and other functions.
What's their life on one of those?
I don't have the exact lifespan because it goes by every AFG goes back so many cycles of the NFPA, and I believe off the top of my head this last cycle was 5 cycles, 5 times 3 years, 15 years, and our air packs exceeded that by quite a bit.
But then again, they have to be periodical. They'll have to be pressure tested and recertified, and that's what Rob was talking about. And they may fail an inspection and they have to be replaced. But Not common that they would do that. It's possible though. It's like dive tanks for those of you that are divers. You have to have your tank inspected and pressure tested on a regular schedule. Same thing with these.
The actual cylinders are every 5 years, but to actually do a function test on the air packs is required every 2.
So that was good news. And again, that's not reflected in the budget because we just found that out Monday.
So the 5,500 will go away? Or that'll
5,500
be,
will turn out being our match as opposed
for the
to
6,500.
just the minimal replacement.
okay.
Correct. Actually, the match will be this year. That's an immediate award, isn't it?
I can't answer that right now.
I think that's an immediate award, so we'll probably be replacing those bottles this year, so that 5,500 would go away and would come out of this year's expenses.
Won't that budget have to go up to 6,500 to meet the match?
Yeah, another 1,000.
They'll have to be transferred.
Yeah.
There'll have to be a transfer, and we'll also have to do a budget amendment from somewhere else in fire to offset that.
Scoot on with that thing.
How about a little bit up a little higher to supplies? Dan was evidently asking for 10,
Where is this
and you
at?
dropped it to 5. Just
Where we at?
few up,
726.
few up higher.
Under
Supplies.
firefighting, 726.
Oh, firefighting?
Mhm.
Supplies EMS.
Yeah, again, fire department, the chief was requesting, and again, I went back, now that we basically replaced much of our equipment. I didn't feel that we needed to go that high at this point on the EMS, so I'm recommending 5,000, the chief asked for 10, and I went back again, looked at the prior 3 years in terms of what we had actually spent.
That's a pretty big difference, though. What was his rationale? Did he even say what he was thinking or why he was thinking 10 grand?
Well, I think part of it was, the expansion of our coverage and our expansion of services, but in the course of discussion, I think we came to an agreement that it's really not going to be a whole lot different than what it would have been if we didn't have the ambulance. We would still be responding, so taking a conservative approach.
Okay. Kind of halfway. Yeah.
Well, and again, remember, in the general fund, I have set aside some additional funds in the general fund in a couple of areas to be able to cover some of the unanticipated issues that might occur not only in the fire department but in planning and zoning and not so much in assessing but a little bit in assessing as well. So we've got some flexibility in the general fund to be able to lend support without increasing the millage rates, basically, is where I'm going on that.
Well, I imagine he was thinking 10 because actual through June was 5,000, so
Right.
I'm sure he was figuring we're going to do the same
Right.
thing for the second half.
But again, remember for 2020, we're adding staff as well.
Where would supplies come out of as far as outfitting a new ambulance if we went that route?
That would have to be part of the original purchase
Of the,
of the vehicle itself. Yeah, the same thing we did when we bought this one. The ambulance itself was about 40,000, all round numbers, and then we included in the financing of it, the millage request to finance it, we included the equipping of it as well, and that was paid off in the first year. And we would do the same thing in the purchase, out of the replacement and maintenance fund, we would equip, just pay for it. No financing. And what we did originally is we financed the original purchase and then paid it off in that year.
it'll never make money.
Don't need it.
It's gonna lose.
Don't need it.
Don't need it.
So, debt service.
Yes.
Tell me about that. Manager recommended He doesn't have anything on his, so.
It's 20611. Just reference the pages.
I don't have the page number. It's the last page, fire
Yeah.
fund.
905,
I know, yes,
905 debt service.
that's service. The principal,
Mm-hmm.
fire hall,
Yep. We do not list it there because if you go just down and would transfer out to the general fund, 84,000,
mm-hmm,
80,000 of that is their payment. Remember, the way we set this up,
yeah.
general fund is making the payment
That's
on
right.
all of the facilities, fire hall and the township hall. Fire department is transferring 80,000 a year. We fixed that at their amount because of their millage funding. So the general fund is paying the difference since the township owns both buildings.
So what's the 19,440 then? Is that, it's not interest, it says principal. Is that extra, maybe retained earnings from last year or from this year? Expected?
Don't know that.
Just so I can let the chief know, is that 991.034?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's manager recommendation. Because Dan didn't have anything.
Well, that's,
I actually have that figure written down by chief right here, so
Oh,
I'm thinking they did talk.
I think that came, did that come originally on the original?
No, that's something that, to me, it looks like it was like a plug number, like a leftovers, based on everything
No,
else that was put in.
that's not a recommendation for
Okay.
me. I didn't see that.
Right, yeah, I didn't. I don't have that
I have it handwritten on here.
okay. You can check on that and see
Yeah.
where it came from or why it's.
It's a phantom number.
either. Yeah.
What's whatever's left over from
That's
the
what I'm
special
thinking.
assessment that goes to the building, basically, I'm thinking.
So that's what he's expecting from this
I
year.
believe, we
Yeah.
did talk on this briefly, I believe it was for the principal on the building, but I cannot confirm
Yeah,
that
because
100%.
we set that up basically so the fire department would have a fixed dollar amount every year that they contributed.
Mhm.
It's fixed at 80,000. So
Then whatever's
everything else
left
comes out of
over.
the general fund.
It's moved.
So this is additional.
Yeah,
Well,
So
I think
left
I think that's a phantom number, but we'll double check on it.
that would have to be what's expected from this year.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, those are the only questions I had because
Okay.
everybody else's were pretty much the same as mine. The only thing I'd like to see, Rob, next year, I think it'd be a little bit easier. I had mentioned this to Randy just a couple days ago too, is to have the narrative in the same format as the rest of the budget. Actually, Jason's is about the best, but I would like to see on his the actual numbers. So if he's saying, I don't have his handy in front of me. For instance, he's got 801 dot 000 contracted services, and he's saying there's no increase or anything, just have the number there. So we don't have to keep going back to this every 5 minutes. When we're looking at the narrative, we don't have to go back to the spreadsheet. It should have
Okay.
the department request and then whatever it's either changing or not changing to would make it so much easier. This should just be a backup to the narrative. But if you look at Jason's is pretty easy figure.
The clerk says like that too.
Yeah, pretty much. It doesn't give the real number and what it's changing to or not changing to or how it's being reduced.
Yeah, because they don't change.
If they don't, that's fine because it says in
Most of the
some
time that they don't change, that's
Yeah.
why.
And that's okay. Yeah, well, especially like our salary. Didn't we decide that we were going to go up every year?
We didn't last
We
year.
didn't vote on that, did we?
No, we
Didn't
didn't
pass
last
that.
year, but
That's fine. Because we were talking about having it somehow consistent so we didn't have to keep addressing it. So Sorry, I was jumping around.
I think to do that, you have to establish a compensation commission.
I don't know, I just remember talking about, the recommendation was to do something consistently so we didn't have to address it.
Yeah, I think if you want to go in that direction, I think you have to establish a compensation commission that then takes an action every year and makes a
Still have
recommendation
to
as
do
part
that.
of the budget process.
Okay.
Yeah, because you have to, if you're changing your salaries to increase them, you can do that by board action, but you can't decrease them.
Right.
Again, it's got to be by resolution too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's all I had.
I think you're right, and on the motion we made on that salary thing originally.
That's the way I remembered it.
The motion.
We had to make individual motions for each group of two.
Yeah, but I thought Randy recommended that we put something in place so that we wouldn't have to address it every year.
Yeah,
Because it was 9 years before we had a raise.
Yes, that's
I think we should go back and look at the motion. I think there was something in there already.
We should probably have those motions right here, shouldn't we? We've got the book. This is where we need to
Yeah,
keep
but that
them.
was done before 2018 either.
Yeah, probably, but even then,
Well, it would be the rationale for a change.
Yeah, well, I'll look at it, see.
Anything else on fire?
anything else on fire, guys?
The best thing, he didn't get called out.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
It really helped you get grant money and get some KBIC money. Two great gifts.
I think we've actually done pretty well on both counts.
2017, we didn't have to go back.
Rob, the firefighters
Can do that,
paid on call, there's 30, is that the top, that's what they like to work out from? I don't have.
32 is the max.
32 is the max.
Yeah, that's, the board authorized maximum is 32.
With all the changes that we foresee as far as family and, people volunteering, that, think that'll ever change in the next couple of years?
As far as going up or down?
Up, going up.
Right now, we're pretty happy to be able to be maintaining like we are. A lot of departments are unable to do that.
Right, exactly.
Nationwide, firefighting is getting harder and harder to get people up.
I was reading an article on that, and it just said it's hard to get the people to volunteer for it, and stuff like that, go through all the training and stuff like that. So I just looked at this, we have 30, but in the future, I think we should look at more, 32.
The chief's always looking.
Yeah, we always look, and one of the things that we have to at least be mindful of is, I mean, we could set the limit at 40, but that means you have to have 40 sets of turnout gear, 40 sets of everything, to fit, to match. So we're pretty fortunate right now is that most of our firefighters are a pretty consistent size, so we're able to reuse some of the turnout gear and things such as that. But I mean, that's an expensive.
It is.
It's an expensive issue as you continue to add new people and have to equip them. It's just like police officers. You can have 50 police officers and only have so many of them active at a time. You just still have to equip all of them.
That's why I wonder about the article,
Yeah.
because it seems like the department itself is getting along good, and you don't see much turnover in that. And so it's down the road already.
Nationwide, and Rob can speak to this too, but nationwide the trend is down.
It is.
The trend is going down because of the additional training requirements and certification requirements that are being placed on volunteers and paid on calls. It makes it difficult, particularly for those in child raising age brackets. It makes it more and more difficult for them to be able to put the time forward to be fully trained and equipped and ready to go. We're seeing that. That's one of the reasons on the weekends we've made the suggestion that we add 2 more positions to be able to staff for the weekends. That's been a very increasingly active time frame for us. It's when you need to be ready and available when people are active, and that's when they're active, not at the opportune times. It's usually not 8 to 5.
But even, I think it's stated in a lot of these smaller communities, they have just a handful of guys, and if something happens and they have to do something, or, they're not available.
And they're getting older.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of attrition that way too. People just, you reach a point where you just can't throw a 50-pound person over your shoulder and climb a ladder. You know, that you reach that point, no matter how physically fit you are today, you're going to reach that point where it's going to be difficult or impossible to do that.
Well, that's just like in the boots and the uniforms and stuff, we lighten them up, but you know, the guys here going up the ladders and that, it's just, there's a lot of weight going up there.
What's the status of the employees, the new ones?
Status?
Yeah, of the new,
Oh, the full-time?
new full-time ones.
They probably won't be until the first of the year. Right now, we're covering with designated on-call for the weekend. But we probably won't have the two full-timers on until close to the beginning of the year.
Have we identified them yet, or are we still going through that process?
No, we're still going through that process, and hopefully they'll come from existing paid-on-call staff. You know, we've been lucky in the past when I've had vacancies in building and grounds. We've been lucky to have paid-on-call staff that were available and willing to go to a full-time position. You know, so we're able to have on the day shift. We've got 6 full-time people on the day shift. You know, that are regular responders. We're starting to look at it, but right now we're trying to see how much we can do to keep costs down and how much we can do just by designating on calls for the weekend. And that seems to be working pretty well, actually.
So far it is,
Yeah.
but it's
It's going to reach a
starting
saturation point, I'm sure. And hopefully our weekend calls will start to decline somewhat as the weather changes. I don't know that it will, but it's possible. There'll come a time where it won't be advisable to jump off of jump off of the rocks. You'll know there'll be ice at the bottom, you know.
Yeah, but a lot of the calls lately have been older people too,
They
with
have been.
falls. And Lost Creek is, you know, a big percentage of the calls. So it isn't just the touristy things, or because more people are in town.
A lot of lift assists,
Yep.
a lot of calls that in a younger person wouldn't be alarming. You know, like leg pains, and you know, is it a clot? I mean, you know,
Trouble breathing.
profuse bleeding, bleeding nose. You know, there's been a lot of calls that you really don't know what it is. Well, we had the one last week that was a lift assist that turned out to be a transport from the city.
no comment.
So I mean, we're seeing more and more calls to back the city up as well. So I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that or bad with that, but it just again points to the fact that there is a limitation on available resources. You know, if we have to be dispatched all the way over by Lakeview Arena to cover a call that the city wasn't able to handle because they were already out. So that just, I think, points to the need, that it's an increasing need, not a decreasing need.
Of the community.
The entire community,
Yeah.
you know, and
So
we are one community.
4 or 5 calls back, like in 2 hours, I think.
Oh, yeah.
One of them was backing up.
Yeah.
The resources of the community are limited based on the number
We
of
had,
calls.
what was it, 2 weekends ago or 3 weeks ago, we had 3 back-to-back calls that required 3 vehicles to be out on a weekend.
Sometimes the radio just winds up so fast.
Are the paid-on calls, are they at the fire hall or at home
You, for the ambulance,
for the weekend, you said?
on the weekend, they're at the fire station,
fire
the
station.
designated crew. And they're out the door usually within a minute and a half.
And when they get dispatched, then the folks that are at home know, you know, that they're out. You know, and in that particular weekend, you know, 2 of the crews came in on call.
So if they leave, someone else backs them.
Right.
Or if they need assistance, backups.
Right.
So does the paid-on-call individuals rotate from week to week or month to month, or?
The chief has a sign-up sheet for the designated individuals, and people sign up for the shifts they'd like to work.
Randy, has there been any talk of having a little stipend, increased pay for the EMTs versus, is that reflected in here?
It might be, depending on what we actually get to. As I said, you know, part of, if you look at that one line item in the general fund, there's a flat dollar amount there. That's a calculation based on what the three-step is, plus a little more for ancillary type stuff like that, because we've been talking about, you know, EMT it's an add-on to the firefighter. So not all firefighters are EMTs. not all EMTs are also firefighters, so that's what we're looking at. We've got one EMT that's not a firefighter, but is going to be trained as a firefighter. So she's entering training. So yes, we've been talking about possibilities of what and how much and, you know, all of those kinds of things.
I strongly believe that something should be done with that. They got the extra training, they take the extra time to get the extra credits to maintain their license. It's just, there should be a little bit more something for the EMTs versus an hourly wage versus the firefighters.
We're still doing some research on that. I suspect it'll be something you'll see for the 2020 budget.
Will we see that by the end of the year, probably?
Probably by the time the budget's adopted.
We've got too many question marks yet. I don't know.
It's kind of a moving target right now. We've got a lot of irons in the fire still. Got a couple of grant requests out that we hope to hear from before the end of the year that will impact the 20 budget.
In a perfect world, Ron, what would you, Rob, would you like to see? You know, pie in the sky.
Don't quite understand your question.
I'm just thinking for the department. If you had, you know, the genie came out and said, okay, you get one wish, what would it be?
Wow.
He's retiring.
That would help the
Honestly,
department?
I can't answer that right now.
I just wondered, you know,
shooting
if
from the
there's,
hip.
I
I
would-
know there's,
sometimes in the crux you always say, gee, if we just had,
From my standpoint, if the genie showed up for the fire department, I think, you know, obviously we've got things like, you know, the apparatus and all that that we're dealing with, that we're addressing, but something that we're not addressing from a safety standpoint, and I had a very brief conversation about it Monday, I think it was, with the chief, and I think Mike was it. Were you there when Bromley was there?
I was.
Okay, it with you was, I would like to see an improvement to the turnout gear that would be a little more protective. Something like a layer of Teflon or something like that in the turnout gear, because firefighters are becoming targets, just like police officers. Some kind of protective, you know, further protection in their turnout gear from projectiles and
something else for them to carry on their body.
That's impractical. I mean, that to me, that's just totally impractical. By the time as much gear as they got on, by the time they were able to do anything like that, it would just be too late. So I would think for firefighters, it'd be something more along the lines of a layer of some kind of a ballistic material in their turnout gear and helmets. Just, you know, just like the military does. Not that it would be oppressive or more restrictive, but just more protective from any number of things, whether it's an explosion that they're working on or whatever, you know, so they don't get in your butt from flying projectiles or glass or anything else. I mean, I would think that would be something I'd pick.
In all honesty, there's so many things that we're trying to improve upon. The vehicles are a big part. Training facilities is a big part. You know, when we go out and train, we train with what we can get available. And sometimes it's difficult to make a realistic environment with limited resources. And, you know, without the vehicles, you can't get to the fire and you can't fight it effectively. And times have changed over the past 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Fire
is definitely a different animal now than we started.
Well, buildings are different animals too. Building construction is different with you know, the clear span.
The fire load inside the buildings. Fire is a completely different animal than when Dan and I started in the third floor.
Do we have access to every piece of property in the township? You gotta go, I know over off of Vanderbilt one time, we had a hard time getting in there by the railroad tracks or something. We had to wait for a smaller truck to come in.
There's certain areas that we cannot get the big vehicles in. And I believe the landowners out in them areas know that. We've had reported structure fires that we were no way, no how, going to get a big truck in.
So there's nothing that we could do through planning or for driveways width and, like a road, MDOT, they got a certain specification for a size of the road and the width of it and stuff like that. Is there anything that we should think about?
For the
From a protective
future.
standpoint, we do have those kinds of requirements, like
Okay.
at Partridge Bay Trail and places like
Yeah.
that. They are required to maintain a width and a height of clear access for us to get into. And, some of the places that Rob was talking about are, historically been camps that have now been converted into homes, and the access has not changed, so those folks are noticed that, if we can't get to you, we're not gonna build a road, it's up to you, to maintain access, but we do have a smaller piece of equipment, and, we've got hose to run, but even at that, access to water is then an issue. Tankers only carry so much, and
You're not gonna get tankers anywhere close to some of these places.
Oh, I mean, if you look at it, there's some of our streets that the trees are growing over that you run a big trucker down there. I know I seen a semi come down Woodridge one time. He had to go all over just to get down the street. And if we don't start getting the county and that start thinking about that.
well, I think there needs to be some concerted effort with you just say with the county, with BLP, in keeping lines clear and trimming branches, because, part of the issue with the semi drivers, they don't want to break a branch out that's also going to take a power line down,
Exactly.
because the power lines are in the trees, basically, it's we live in a wooded community, and that's just kind of the way it is. Trees have grown up around the power lines, and now they're enclosed.
But they don't see the importance of it either, because I've talked to them for another reason and that. And they said, well, if it falls down on it, we'll come and cut it down. But they don't see the importance of thinking ahead and planning for it. They're just, we just call light power to come in there, light power, say we'll call it county, and, come on.
Yeah. Comes to most cases, it comes down to access to resources, having the ability to do it. And, liability for dropping branches in a residential neighborhood, who knows?
Yeah.
Any number of issues. But access is critical, being able to get it somewhere. You can run hose, but you can only run it so far.
Anything else today? Well, we can always come back or ask more questions, or we'll look at it again too, in case something else.
Yeah, these are just preliminary meetings, to get initial questions answered, but again, as we go through October and November, we'll have more and more information, and it'll potentially modify some of these budget sheets.
Okay. Thanks for coming, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
Good job.
Well, thank you, Rob.
We jump into the
I
general
gotta go
fund?
do some crowd.
How do you want to approach general fund? Do you want to do the same thing, to jump into questions, or do we want to?
Since I'm gonna leave early, I'll do the clerk's budget right away.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so it's on 101-12, this is general fund. That's my budget general fund clerk department, and if you have any questions on that, then it's there.
And the narrative is at the back of the general fund.
Yeah, it's 101-12. I guess the only difference is going to be is there's 3 elections stated for next year, one in March, one in August, and one in November, so it's going to drive the cost of the elections up.
Pretty cutting room there.
Yeah, I might not go to Traverse City, so that travel and conference might not be as high as what it is, so. And 101-13 is the actual elections budget. I did look at the city of Marquette's rates for the election inspectors as of now, and we were underpaying ours. And to keep quality election inspectors, you have to keep up with the wages. So I talked to Lois, and I decided to increase our wages $2 per hour for the co-chairs and $1 an hour for the election inspectors. And I thought that was reasonable for the increasing complexity and responsibility of the elections, which it's becoming more difficult as we move forward with changes in law and such. So that's the only thing that would change in that budget.
I think that's quite reasonable.
I guess the big thing there is 3 elections.
Yeah, we got 3. Our basic change was the hourly wage. St. Christopher's went up from $100 a day to $300 a day, so that's going to increase my cost a little bit. And I think we're going to have to buy new envelopes for absentees, so that supplies are going to probably could be right at that limit, because we found out they're changing the envelopes, so we can't use the old ones. We have to buy new ones, and that's about it. We might, with the changes in law, I'm expecting the state's going to rebrand absentee voting as early voting, so because it's no reason now. So we might have more absentee voting moving forward, which it doesn't
Do you
increase.
need any more computers or anything like that?
No, our computers will be fine for the next few years. Not this year, but with our new voting machines, I think after 5 years, in year 6 through 10, we're going to have additional cost of $3,000 a year for our maintenance agreements, but that won't be for into 2022, I believe. But that's about it. That budget should be pretty much the same as last year, other than the changes in the elections. And I did, as we were talking about, the increase in the salary for the elected official was 1.5%. We can't make a board motion to do that. That doesn't. So I think by consensus we talked about that. And I think Randy, the manager at the time, said we should kind of mirror the staff. We didn't want to, go above that. And I think that's what they got that year, about 1.5%. Yeah, and we did it for all committees, not only board, but for all committees. And we did it by resolution for the supervisor, board, clerk, and treasurer, and the trustees. So Roger Zappa said you can't accommodate that by motion. It has to be by resolution for each position. So even if you made a motion to increase the salary every year by 1.5%, you have to do a resolution every year to do that. So we did that in 2018, for 2018. So that's where we're at. So we got a 1.5% for all the committees in 2018. So that's where we're at for that.
Thanks for checking that.
Should it change? I don't know. That's not my forte.
Yeah, I was just trying to follow up on what I remembered.
Well, it hadn't changed in, I think, 9 years or something, so we did adjust it a little bit, but
Actually, it was longer than that.
maybe longer than that.
I think it was 9, we looked back.
Was that 9?
Yeah. I think I got $20 after 9 years.
Oh, he's got a big increase then.
Yeah. You might have gotten 18.
So-
I didn't get 18.
Myself, I'm satisfied for 2020, but maybe moving forward, we should look at maybe a percentage every
Yeah,
year.
that'll be something for the new board to figure out.
And if you do that every year, you have to do a resolution. And the reason we didn't have to do a resolution for the committees is because I think we set that salary every year. We didn't have to do a resolution for like the planning commission or the ZBA or the board of review.
And those salaries are set in the budget.
Yeah, so we didn't have to do a resolution for that, but we have to for board salaries. So any questions on the clerk's department? No capital expenditures expected for this year, no CIP for my part.
Okay, no, I don't have any.
Especially wrong and easy.
Are you going now?
Yeah, I will go now. So All I
I'll
gotta do
just
is
shut it
hit
off.
stop and then hit the power.
Okay, got it.
And I have to excuse myself, I have to work at 3 today. So
Are you all recovered from your weekend work?
I am. More work though. Okay.
All right, general fund then.
Just to start off the conversation, if you just look at the bottom line on revenues, it looks like a big healthy increase in revenue. Remember, that includes 1.5 mils for the roads and 0.4 of a mil for law enforcement that are later in the budget removed from the revenues. See in law enforcement, you'll see that in that line item. In the roads, you'll see it will transfer out to township improvements. But any specific questions from board members that we're going to address first?
I think just a clarification on 425 and Lost Creek. All depends on how we address Lost Creek on their units that are not low income. And that we're working on that at this point in time. So that could be have an increase there.
It could.
We apparently didn't get a response back. I haven't heard from Dulcie.
Dulcie is following up with them. They did not respond to the last letter. She has one more letter out to them. And then we come back to talk to the board about what do you want to do? Do you want to repeal the ordinance or do we take them to court?
We already kind of did talk about that, but we can talk about it again.
Well, now they've
She sent them a bill.
You know, by non-responding, they've refused to pay,
They were supposed to provide an appraisal too, and I don't.
which they have not.
I haven't
We
seen that.
received nothing.
No response. Non-responsive.
They have a new leader, director, chairman, whatever.
New manager over
Manager,
there.
is that the title?
I think that's the last I heard. I don't know. They could have changed it again. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Sounds like they're forcing our hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you put a resolution in place and an ordinance for somebody and they renege on it, so that kind of tells you where you're gonna go,
Yep.
I would think.
If they do the paperwork, so we know where we're at, but they're not doing the paperwork, so we have to do with our best knowledge on it. And that's what we did.
Yeah, now, as you look through the revenues, you're going down, the next line below what Treasurer Johnson just mentioned, commercial forest tax and sub-marginal swamp tax and all those kinds of things. We're being extremely conservative on those because the state and feds are cutting back on almost everything or withholding payments on most everything. So we're basically tracking on the revenues on the conservative side.
Do we know for sure yet on the state revenue sharing what the percent's going to be yet?
Well, the figure that's in there is the current projection from Treasury at the time that this was put together. I have not seen anything that changes that as yet. I know they just had a revenue conference, and sales taxes were marginally increased, but the governor's trying to capture that for road repairs. So, don't know. We're going with what was last reported as the expected revenue sharing. Under, just above that, where it says local community stabilization share, this year I'm keeping half of it. The reason there's a decrease there is I'm keeping half of it in the general fund and transferring half of it to the fire department as revenue. Other than that, I didn't really have any other comments on the revenue side unless board members have any questions. So then,
User fees for the community center seem to be pretty.
we've had a lot,
Picking up.
They're picking up because remember last year the board took a position that everybody pays. And previous to that, we had a number of non-revenue government users, and they're now paying for their use.
Do you think?
Unless we are having, as a for instance, when Clerk Rotari has the clerks here, we don't charge for that because we're part of that, we're doing it. But anybody from the outside that's coming in pays.
Are we generating enough revenue to cover expenses there overall?
We have a
I guess
lot
it
of,
all depends. Is it covering a daily cost of operating the building? Probably not, but it covers the cost of our staff that are covering it, the maintenance that we're doing, it covers that. But we're not rolling into that, the cost of operating the entire facility.
No, I'm just talking about
Yeah, I think we're doing pretty well. We've become a very popular location, and that's benefited us in a number of ways. We have a lot of people coming in that are first-time visitors to the township that haven't seen any of this off of the highway, that have generated some interest in development. So some of what's being, the one right across the street, came about from them being here for something else.
How about the rent? Not changing the subject, but just down the road here where they're clear cutting everything.
That's part of this whole development. They own it. The Cornerstone Development owns those two lots, and they're looking at that for a number of reasons. One is they're trying to determine right now how much actual building ground there is there because of the rock, and that's why they're doing some clearing in that one lot, to try and get an idea of just how much rock there is and how buildable it is from a standpoint of the economy. What will it cost to mitigate the rock? And they're also looking at it for potential future use, quite frankly, for us. If we need additional space. Fire department needs additional space. I mean, it's right there close by adjacent. So no commitments have been made or anything along those lines, but, they've talked with us about would we be interested in some additional facilities that we need. I mean, they're in here enough that they know that we're pretty much full, pretty much packed. So.
well, we talked about looking at some storage or building a garage or something for paperwork, if nothing else.
Yeah, but they're also developing, if you've noticed at the end of Venture, down by where Venture joins Wright Street, on both sides of the road, they're opening up that property and also doing the same thing down the other end by Wright Street, opening those up as potential building lots.
Any vacant lot they have over there, they'd like to see something on it.
They are building spec buildings. The two buildings that are under construction on the far side over here are not currently occupied. They're spec buildings. They've done real well with them. Kind of cookie cutter buildings that can be designed for any use. So we've got Wells Fargo's Wealth Management is now in the township. Real estate firms now in the township. We've got orthotics, orthopedics right across the street. So we're starting to fill in. And the building, I don't know if you noticed or not, but the building right at the end of our parking lot that Vince Wadley built's already been sold. and it's got new tenants in it already. So.
I'd like to see something down at the mall. That's why I meant that area is from.
Yeah, there's some activity about to occur there.
Before the end of the year?
Probably, yeah. Under the expenditures 101 under the township board, you're not going to spend $52,947 going somewhere. As I mentioned before, that
You could have a hell of a trip.
that money is basically set aside for compensation increases and 2 bargaining units, health insurance reserve at 10%. We've got those in there, and again, that's for all departments. So that $52,947 will be dispersed as soon as we have those figures, actual figures. Budgeting for 2 board members to go to the MTA conference in Traverse City. trustees. We also have the supervisor and the clerk in their budget as well.
And the treasurer.
And the treasurer's in the budget as well. Now, not all of you may go, but right now, the funds are in the budget for you to go to Traverse City if you choose to go.
I sure hope I
Plus,
can go this
plus
year.
2 other,
Where are you at?
Plus locals.
He's just kind of going
Well, I'm
down.
going down the budget page itself.
Yeah.
I might as well, on the treasurers,
Yeah.
if you look from last year to this year, there's very little any change in that too. So I didn't really put anything extra or anything like that, so it's pretty well taken care of in that. I know there's travel and conference, and to be honest with you, the way things are going, I probably will not be going in that. Just the way things are looking at it, so. It's a hard decision, but it's a decision that's being made for me at this point in time.
And most of the increase that's there in the treasurer's roll-ups basically on the changes to percentages.
Right.
So assessing's talking about a field intern?
Yep, now in assessing, that's the other half. As you know, the deputy treasurer and assessor are kind of a shared department. And what they're looking at is bringing on an intern for the busy season, which is the non-winter time of the year, to get back through and visit all of the properties and to update the maps, basically. And that's projected, right now they're projecting that at $15 an hour for an intern, basically that would work about 20 hours a week in the busy times and then drop down in the winter months to less hours a week, but basically to make sure that all of our records are up to date while they're doing field work, while the regular staff are doing their field work.
How many days a week are they out now? I mean, because neither one of them are in the office a lot.
Well, they're out quite a bit right now because I think they're doing the last quarter of Trowbridge, I believe, is where they're at. I have to check with Dulcie on that. So Dulcie thought she was going to be in here today, but I'm not sure if it's Trowbridge or it's on another quadrant of the township that they're out doing right now. Updating the field cards and the measurements.
So she's not here 2 days a week, so the other 3 days she's...
just
One day.
one day.
Yeah, she's on Thursday.
Thursday's the only day.
Thursday's the day that she's not here.
Well, she's been traveling because of the...
Part of the tax tribunal, the tax, not tax tribunal,
Her,
the treasury.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So she's basically out 3 days a week, 2 days a week, so...
that's being cut back because we're going to be doing more by screen than by travel. She just had that policy changed at treasury, so she doesn't have to be present.
Okay.
Can a Thursday be changed?
It's medical. It's under doctor's directive still.
Some of that was no driving.
No.
Yeah, when you first started with no driving.
First started.
Yeah,
But
so
that's,
that
now
apparently
she's
changed.
still under restriction for days, basically.
We haven't heard back from the attorney yet either.
He's looking at it.
It's been 2 or 3 months
Yeah.
in that too, so, since July.
It's pretty tough on the doctor's ordering.
Then maybe we could have time to retain our own physician. That too, so.
Yeah, we could get
That's
a
what the
second
attorney's
opinion.
looking at. How hamstrung are we?
I guess I would say how important is that Thursday? I mean, we have doctor appointments on Thursdays. So, all right, moving right along.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what the field intern request is to have that similar to what we did with planning and zoning.
I'd like a more detailed report before we move in that direction.
Yeah,
too,
that's what I
so.
was thinking too. I'd like to see how the hours shape up, compare.
The concerns? Elections talked about building and grounds, not really anything in building and grounds to speak of. Again, it's basically roll-ups, increased costs for some of the benefit roll-ups.
Were you putting the police vehicle in for vehicle expenses under buildings and grounds, or is that?
No, that's under law enforcement.
That's just for, that's what I thought. So we don't have any expenses, vehicle expenses this year?
I hope not, because we've basically done it mostly this year. The major repairs were done this year on the dump truck and on the pickup both. Building and grounds, that's all we have for those two vehicles.
But that'd be oil changes or tires or anything? We're not expecting anything?
That falls under the repairs and maintenance.
Okay, it's not considered an expense?
Yep.
Okay.
Under general services, I just had one comment. When I looked at first-class mail, now 50 cents. Isn't it 55 cents?
Yeah,
No, it's 50 through our machine.
oh,
Through
sure.
our postage
Okay.
machine,
Yeah.
it's still
Okay.
50.
Probably true. Yeah, I had the same question. Because I sent them $50 for a roll of stamps, and they sent it back saying, you owe me $5. I didn't even know it went up to 55.
Yeah. And now it may go down because the courts didn't go along with them and that too. I don't know if they're going to drop it back down to 50 or not.
We've never received a copy of the lawsuit.
You need something, John?
No.
And Meyer is still pending, so we've got the 10,000 in there for legal fees.
Pretty conservative budget, Randy.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's what we're aiming
it's
for.
tight.
You had asked about the law enforcement vehicle. That is down under capital in 903. The remaining 50%. And the police vehicle, 903.
Yeah, I was thinking it was about
7301.
20,000. Okay. Yeah, because we'll get a new one in 20, or will that be for 21?
It'll be in 20.
We
Probably going to be right
pay for it
early
when
in
we
20.
get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's probably going to be early in 20 because they were, last time I checked, they were just pushing 70,000 miles on it, and they roll those over at 80.
So we're going to do the same way we did the last time, sell what we have and
Sell
replace
this one and keep the replacement one,
Okay.
the replaced one, which is now going to be an all-wheel drive Charger. So we'll have a four-wheel drive car.
Are we using the one we keep enough time? I mean, you see it sitting out there and we're paying mileage for different people who go to bank and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah, we're paying very small mileage, and Dan's got it now, and we use it mainly for distance travel for the most part. I'll take it next week when I go to Lansing. I'll take it. Dulcie does not use it. She takes her four-wheel drive, but does not charge mileage for that, just the gas expense.
I took it when I went to Traverse City.
Yeah, I mean we're at I think 109,000 miles on it now. So we put it was about 83 I think it was when we got it. So we put about 20,000 miles on it, a little over 20,000 miles.
I think the average was 15,000 a year, something like that. For if you had your car.
Oh, for miles, yeah, yeah, for full-time use. Let's see what else.
On street lighting, I know Pete's always talked about this. Are we talking about putting more lights up? Have we got a plan for moving forward on that?
I would like to see the road committee take a look at that because we haven't done anything with that. And, we're paying $13 and some odd cents per light.
Right.
Poles are $400. But there's a lot of dark spaces in our ordinance. We have ordinance anytime you have over 45 degree or your intersections and stuff like that. You want to have a light up there. We don't have all those covered. We don't have our curves. We don't have our hills, stuff like that. And we And that's dark, because of the foliage, the trees are coming down, covering the road, it's dark. I stopped and asked that one lady, I said, are you comfortable in walking late at night? And first of all, she stopped and looked at me. This is the second time I've done this.
So now we know why you've got that push cart.
I can't catch them. But it is, it's awful dark in a lot of areas. I mean, if you come out on Cherry Street past Woodridge down to Granite, they're just coming right over the road. And I tried to ask a question because of Mark ran in that, but
Yeah, and these guys.
one says, oh, wait till they fall down, and one says, well, just call the county, and either one of them care.
Well, it's a good point, because in Trowbridge, as you drive around Trowbridge at night, many of the street lights are above the trees.
Right.
So the trees are impeding the lighting to begin with. What you do see there, however, is I did check with the city under the electricity. I checked with the city to find out what the impact of the roundabout lighting was on their bills, and I've treated ours essentially because we'll be picking up the electricity costs for the roundabout lighting. So that's why you see the increase there.
Yeah, but we're paying for the roundabout lighting for people going through our thing, but we never take care of the people who are living in our community. That's the way I looked at it. It was just.
And it kind of goes back, we've said this multiple times. We have saved the road commission $7 million, and when we ask for something,
We don't get nothing.
we don't get anything. And it's not like we're asking for special favors. This is their responsibility. Oh, I don't get that.
And there's more and more people out there walking, riding than there ever were before. Walking up and down the street around here, up by the park, down Woodridge, Ontario. They stay too much off of Ontario because they'll come over to Erie, Woodridge, or Granite, and then go up and down that way. But there's a lot of people out there. And I'm surprised a lot of younger kids without their parents. That bothers me a lot.
We have a lot on Fair Avenue.
Yes.
It's getting more and more all the time.
Yeah.
I don't get a solution.
If you're going to cover all the dark areas
Well,
in the township,
you can't.
you aren't going to be able to afford it.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of them that are much darker than Trowbridge.
Yeah.
In your area?
They're anywhere you go off.
Anywhere.
You go off in the distance and look at where the dark areas are. There's plenty of them, and some of them are going to have trails by them.
And every time you bring up the issue, they're going to have people come in and talk to you about, I want to see the dark stars. The light is protruding on it. I can't see the stars.
Oh, hell,
And they have,
we have that.
I know.
We have, and quite frankly, one of the reasons that you're not seeing a lot of budgeted lighting is because where we have installed lighting, I've had more people come and say, get that blank light out of here. It's shining in my window, I can't see the television. So it's, not everybody wants it. And that's the balance that we pretty much have to track.
We just have to take the safety aspect of it, and that's where the road committee could do something, take a look and just see where the worst ones and for the safety of the residents.
Up in your area,
We can, but
we have
again,
our own
if
lights that we
you,
pay for.
it's a double-edged sword.
Lights
And you'll have folks who
They
want
were
the
put
dark.
in.
Exactly.
They don't want the light, and we run into that in a number of places where we've had to spend more money to shield the lights. Now, they don't shine in somebody's particular piece of property. It's crazy. Anyway, the roundabout lighting, the roundabouts, remember the EDA is paying for those roundabout lights out of the DDA. So, eighth of a mile on each side. And as of the mining journal today, they're still identifying by the end of October. Next week they should be paving the north side of the second roundabout. So they're moving along pretty quickly. Got 2/3 of the tunnel is in. The north side and the center is in. The south side has to be done.
When they shut the road down.
How deep down did they have to go to the top of the opening?
Seems to me it was 12 feet, I think.
I don't remember that
Wasn't the tunnel
discussion.
12 by 12?
The
Yeah.
tunnel is, but
Yeah.
sub
But it
below
had
the
to go
grade
down so many feet.
surface. I think there's 12 feet on top of the tunnel.
From the surface to the top of the tunnel.
I think there is.
Somebody
I could
asked
be
me
wrong
that
on
the other
but
day,
seems to
and-
me that's what's sticking in my mind is 12 feet.
Okay.
And then the road surface on top of it.
Mhm.
Let's see, anything else? Let's see what else of significance. Planning is pretty much right on last year's budget. Zoning Board of Appeals, same way. Recreation, the only thing I've got in recreation is we've increased the contracted services if we want to do some fertilizer and weed control on the ballpark, the ball field, and we have to contract that out because of the area. We can't, our guys can't do it because it exceeds the area that they by law can do. It has to be a certified applicator because of the square footage.
We've got, don't we still have 2 grants that we haven't fulfilled?
Fulfilled or we're back?
No, don't we have, because I was just looking at the ball field, upgrade to the ball field, and I thought we have to expend some funds before we can get reimbursed. Isn't that this year or next year?
That's this year, they're doing the
Yeah.
landscaping at Shrumwood and Lyons. It's supposed to be done this year so we can get the reimbursement.
Right,
next year.
okay. Is that part of this, because you got 3,000 in for upgrades, or
No,
that's
not part of
different?
it. Basically, we still have issues with the field in the northeast corner where it drops down. It needs to be addressed. And we need to do some repairs in the restrooms at the main pavilion, the first pavilion.
Okay.
We do have, we will be having a grant request go out for netting on the south end of the ice rink. That's going to be going out there probably later in October, that grant request. Let's see what else.
But what about that? That's M&RTF, isn't it?
No.
The ones, no, I mean the
Oh,
ones that,
yes, the
yeah, that we need to finish?
first one, and those are on schedule to be done.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, those are planned already. I'm talking about the ones that we have not addressed yet. Same as we did on the north half of the ice rink, we want to do the south half. Same kind of a grant.
Okay.
We're just waiting for that cycle to start.
Schwemmwood is M&RTF and Lyons Field is Passport.
Yeah, I couldn't think of what the word was. I knew there were 2 different ones. What about, of course, it's supposed to be this year. What about the, we talked about it at the last meeting, the equipment we were going to put in the community room. That's in this year's budget though, right?
It will be.
The ATV
Yeah.
equipment?
We are still looking at that. At the most, it's going to be, hang on.
That's coming out of charter.
And it's this year's budget, because,
At the most, that's going to be 10,600. I'm hoping for half of that.
okay,
And, and where the discussion is at this point is just what is it that we, not necessarily what we want in the community room, but what do we need? Do we need an electric screen that comes down out of the ceiling with a mounted projector? I mean,
we were kind of talking about it the last MSU thing that we just had last week, and just the availability of a bigger screen projector type thing is really all that they were saying. I mean, we were talking about different conferences and different learning sessions that we could have there. And they said something about a bigger screen rather than just a TV. And I said, oh, we've already got that discussed,
well,
we're working on that.
We're in discussion.
Not that they were asking for
right
it,
now, but again, can it suffice to have a large screen mounted on the ceiling that you pull down as opposed to an electric one that drops down out of the ceiling, and that's what the 10,600 is, with the wiring and everything else. So we're in discussion on that right now about what is it that we really need, recognizing that we have a pretty tight budget coming up. and how do we best address that.
What are they asking for? The people who come in and rent it, what are they asking? Do you have this or?
Most would suffice with a larger screen, or a larger TV, because, it's most, everybody's plug and play off their computer.
What about the microphones and stuff like that?
That's an issue, because it's tied in through this system and you get bleed through, basically.
Right.
So that needs to be segregated. That's not a big cost. That's a relatively small cost. It's a different router, but can our audio-visual needs be met by a screen twice the size of what's in there now on one wall and maybe another screen on an outside wall where we currently have pictures? So that we're in that discussion right now. What is it that we really need? What's going to best satisfy it at cost the least?
Who's asking for a screen that's going to drop out of the ceiling?
Well, that's come from being in other places that have, like the university and their conference.
I know, but who's asking
stuff.
for this screen that
Well,
drops out of the ceiling?
That's the top end proposal.
The people, the conferences that I've had in here, the people themselves are not requesting it. It's that if you're sitting in the back row, you can't see that little TV screen.
I understand the need for a larger screen.
So people that
I
I've
don't
been here, they haven't
understand
asked
somebody asking for something that drops out of the ceiling. This is not Magic Show.
I understand, and that's the discussion we're having. So, that's the range that we're talking about. And we've not settled on what that is yet, so you're not seeing that in the budget, although funds are in the budget that can be transferred for that use.
You don't want one just hanging down there, John. I think it's what are our options, and for the uses of the community room, what would fit our needs. By having one just laying or like that 3 times, 4 times that size, do we need to just hang, or could you have a screen coming down that would take care of it? I guess they're just weighing out the options that I understand.
So we've got several proposals, and we've not settled on one yet in this budget. So as we go through the budget process and follow-up meetings, we'll have answers to those questions.
When you talk about the drop-down screen up at the Cliffshot Mine Museum, which I'm a member up there, we have one in the one area up there that we use for different facilities, different people that come in. That relatively simple. It's just there. It's a switch on the side of the wall. You throw the switch and it comes down. You stop it when you want. It's almost similar to a pull down. It's all electronic or all electric. That too. There wasn't as much to it.
And you can do that on the facing wall.
Yeah.
That it comes down, as opposed to, like Michigan State and places like that. I mean, when they have the huge conference rooms, they have those drop-down screens and all that. Well, the thought was, wouldn't it be nice to have something like, well, it would. It'd be nice to have a room twice the size, too, but we don't have it. That kind of thing. So, that's where we're at right now. We're just there's about a $5,000 difference, which isn't significant in the budget. But we will have that issue answered. I'm waiting for some follow-up right now from 906.
But even some of the wedding parties that I've been to, they have TV on the wall, and they have pictures of it, stuff like that.
Definitely. I think we need a bigger TV screen. Twice the size of the one that's in there. The one that's in there could be moved to the outside wall. That's that size. So you'd have 2 different screens, like we have here. Multiple screens.
Here's such a small room here, so to speak, and we got 3 of them.
Yeah. Well, this is mainly for the audience,
right?
For people to see. But that's where we're at. Yeah, that's why you don't see it in here right now, because we haven't settled on what it is. But there is available funding here now. Along those same lines, if you go all the way to the bottom, you're going to see a net effect of $134,386. Well, that's there for these kinds of things that have not yet been addressed in the budget. It's a reserve account. Ultimately, some of that is going to be consumed. I would have to guess for health insurance is my guess. We fund 80% of the health insurance, and if it's a 16 or an 18% increase, that's going to be a huge increase. We've got 10% budgeted, so. That's what that 163 is for. I have budgeted a contribution back to the solid waste fund. We're trying to do that every year.
Do we know the balance of that?
Lois, I'm gonna have to rely on you for that, because I don't recall right offhand what the balance is.
213,244.
So, say 214,000 by the time interest adds on to it.
That's ending this year or right now?
Oh,
Right
that's,
now.
Right now.
that's right now, but that's being paid back over 30 years is the duration.
We should up
And
that.
we're into it now for
The solid waste
what,
payment.
10 years, I think?
We should up that.
I think we're into it 10 years. But again, that's a fund that you're probably never gonna touch.
But still, it's a loan.
Interfund loan.
On the Grove Street land purchase, is that the property we just purchased this last year?
Yes.
I have community promotion circled. Is some of that 15,000 for beautification going to be the roundabouts?
Yes.
Because that seems awfully high.
Well, that's why you see that RAB in there. 15,000 is our normal beautification that we do at the planters
that's
and all
what
that,
RAB is.
and then the RAB is roundabouts.
Roundabout, okay.
Now you have the rink net.
Yep.
Is that over and above that grant if we get it?
That's what we hope to get for the grant. That's what we anticipate the cost is going to be. And if we receive the grant, then that 12.5 will go away, go back into the fund balance. But that's presuming that we don't get the grant.
That's just half of it though, right? Wasn't it 5,500 or something for one half?
Well,
And this is the other half you're going for?
yeah, well, we learned some things on that. So the second half is not going to be as expensive. It's not going to be as, we don't have the issue as bad on that
Sure.
side.
Probably smaller?
Yeah.
Okay.
That north side is where we were having all of the issues with the neighbor across the street.
Sure.
Again, you see township improvements, transfer out to township improvements, 505,000. 392,544, that comes from the road millage, and we are offsetting that by 113,280 out of the general fund. The reason for that is, when we did the bonding for the roads, we were still drawing full taxes from the big boxes and projecting an increase in revenue of 5% a year. That's not happening. So we're offsetting that from the general fund revenues until we get the flop, and I can't remember how many years that was where we go the other direction.
7 that started.
7, I think?
Yeah.
It starts going back the other way.
Yeah.
So for this intervening period, and now, we have, the last one is pending. So general fund is offsetting some of those bond costs for that project based on reduced taxes.
So are you expecting?
And I'm not just saying the big boxes, because the state has given reprieves to some property tax groups.
So are you expecting to take that back once the turn happens, like in year 8?
I'm expecting not to have to allocate that.
That's all? Not to be able to get reimbursed for any of that? Okay.
Nope, we won't be reimbursed for any of that.
So how many times are we paying for the tribunal then?
Lots.
Legal and
Yeah, I mean,
the lost taxes and then this
and I think
change?
that's what's lost on our legislature is the impact to communities and to the residents in the communities is absolutely astoundingly huge from those decisions. There's a spin-off effect from it. It's not just the tax revenue that you're losing, it's the ability for governments to continue to provide the services without that revenue. And it's coming out of your general funds, that's where it's coming from. We have good roads, but it's costing us money.
Well, that's what the people ask for, so at least they're getting what they want. That's the good thing.
Well,
It's not something we decided or somebody else said we had to have.
And luckily, we still have development going on in the township that's kind of offsetting that, but there's still a cost.
Well, we're hoping that the good roads and all the other lighting and stuff like that attracts more people to come and build their houses in the township and do business out here.
But with that costs additional costs too.
Service costs. The only other general fund budget that has really discussion or any issue, not so much issue, but impact is township improvements, is the other big one. That's in your township improvement tab, 246-1. There's a lot of money moves through there.
What page is that on?
That's 246-1. And you'll have a township improvement tab in your budget sheet.
Township improvement, okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's a sizable amount that goes through there, and that's where you see the contributions that are come in for funding the underpass. And what we anticipate to go out. Under the pass-through. What we're paying on the roads is the 2016, it's supposed to be 2015, 2016. Any questions on that? The others are pretty small, standard accounts, liquor law, libraries, a pass-through, metro fund.
Randy, was there some law coming up about the size of your street signs and that? I heard something a couple of years ago.
That was initially passed and it's been put on hold. Basically what it amounted to was it was a requirement that all street signs had to be reconfigured into a different size sign that was
Reflective, wasn't it?
well, it reflective to a certain level of reflection, similar to what you see on the highway signs. And then that was put in abeyance, held in abeyance. So as we replace street signs, we are replacing them with the proper size that will be compliant, but we've not gone through and replaced all of them, just those that we routinely replace. You can see that reflected in the street signs in the general fund. So if we order a new street sign now, it's in that new configuration.
How's the generator coming?
Lois, you're sworn to secrecy here. The generator is, I've taken it out of this budget because Friday, we received notice that the state police have opened up a new grant program for police and fire, and we have submitted a grant request to cover the generator here because fire department, if we're down, fire department has no access to our servers and they have no access to the telephone system. So, and the community room can no longer function as a temporary housing facility. So we submitted that grant Monday, grant request, and we're pending release of it. So it's not in our budget.
When should we find out?
They received it, and my understanding is that they're going to be reviewing that quickly because it wants to be done this year. They want to distribute it. It's under hazard mitigation funding. So geared towards police and fire.
So they want to do it in this year's, their budget, which is the end of October.
Correct. So I'm expecting it to be acted on relatively quickly. So if that gets denied, you'll see it back in the budget.
Actually, that was this year's budget, wasn't it?
Yes. It's in this year's budget.
Yeah.
I have 25,000, I think,
Yeah,
in this year's
so.
budget. Lois and I have been talking about that, about where that's going to transfer from. It's currently residing in an account that's not earmarked as generator.
It'll be a carryover dollar amount if we get it. If we get the grant.
If we get the grant, it will reside in the general fund balance. Right now, it is in the budget, right, in this year's budget, but it's not specifically identified as a generator because we knew there were grant funds coming.
Did you get that, Dave?
Yeah, I got that.
We can pay down the solid waste grant.
Yeah,
do that.
It's all tracked.
Okay. I'll come back to that later.
When you come down to it, there isn't a heck of a big change this year at all. There isn't.
Like I said, we've made a great effort this year to try and be conservative in our revenues, but realistic, and pretty realistic from a historical standpoint, recognizing we're going to have increases in electrical power, and those increases are built in, but generally not doing things that we don't really have to do for 2020 to see how that all shakes out. Luckily, we do very well in grants. I mean, we've been very successful in all kinds of grants, recreation side, fire side, construction. It's just we've been very, very fortunate in terms of being able to do some things with other people's money. Well, partially our money. It's all tax. Most of it comes from taxes, but not directly out of our pockets.
Well, you're sleeping, I got on.
Well, if there's nothing else, we can stop.
It's 3 o'clock almost anyhow.
We've been quiet over here.
We can talk about it again.
Yeah, these are all of this is just preliminary discussion to your budget sessions. So when you get into your budget sessions, detail, much more discussion. And we'll have hopefully better information by the middle of October on some fairly substantial items.
But this is not going to change that much at this point in time.
It shouldn't change this much or that much. Hard to say, depending on what the state does. And what, there's now a bill pending to change pharmaceutical costs. I mean, there's all kinds of things going on. Every day there's something new that gets thrown up against the wall to see if it sticks.
Okay, so we've got next Tuesday, we've got another budget session in the afternoon before our meeting. We can kind of finish up on this part and talk about the manager replacement. Otherwise, are we good today?
That's
I
it.
should wait till Pete comes back. I don't think he had any other questions.
I think I saw him roll right on out the door.
Did you? No, he didn't take all of his stuff.
You can, just for the record, you can get a Class A 72-inch fixed screen for less than $4,000.
Oh, yeah.
You know, okay.
Did you put one in your living room?
No, I don't have a big enough
Just-
living room for that.
Just
But
to-
I'm just saying that you can get one, and you're getting high quality, Class A, top of the line, for 72 inches for less than $4,000.
Oh, yeah, I think in the community room, we can fill up that entire wall with a screen
Yeah.
for less than $5.
Well, I
Yeah.
think in addition, what he was talking about, McCarthy, was not so much a TV as it was a projection screen.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can't project on TV.
But a projection screen, think about it. That includes the screen, the drop down, but it also is the projection capabilities
Right.
that have to be maintained.
They bring their own, they bring
you
their
know,
own.
and you're going to have people using it that are all the people that want to rent the home.
Now, the biggest
So a fixed screen that nobody can play with, but other than turn it on and turn it off, is a lot less to maintain.
Now, the concern that I have with the projection type system is they all use projector bulbs. And my personal experience with those has not been good.
No.
Projector bulb lasts up to 100 hours maybe, and they're like $400 to replace.
Yeah, and maintain.
Yeah. When I bought my current house, there was an in-home theater type thing with the ceiling projector. And kids watching movies that lasted 100 hours, burned out, $475 to replace the bulb.
Yeah.
Needless to say, I don't have that system anymore. It's gone.
Well, to me, just having a screen up there, and if you want to use it, you bring your own projector.
Well, I don't have an issue with it, but realistically, who's using projectors anymore?
Yeah, that's-
Everybody I know brings
Yeah,
a jump
they've got
drive that's got
PowerPoint.
their material on it, and they plug it into their laptop and project it on that kind of a screen.
But even at the MSU conference, they're setting these up on computers on a 17-inch screen. So they put it up on the TV. Even in the first or second row, you can't read half of what they're giving you.
No.
So it's got, however we get it, whether it's a screen or a TV, it's got to be big enough
Right.
that you can see the
I
presentation.
agree with that 100%. And
They're bringing their own
I've
stuff,
been all
but
for
you
it.
can't read it.
Somebody starts to talk about projection screens. They better talk to people that have used them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great when you have the staff at the university to maintain it. We don't have that, and we have to employ somebody to come in and change the damn bulb. That's crazy. Just because it's the magic of pushing a button and having something go up and down to entertain them. Whoever's asking for it, if it's somebody from staff, tell them to cool it.
Well, that's the discussion we're having, is what is it that we actually need to meet the demand that we have. You know, far and away the bulk of our demand is weddings. I mean, far and away the bulk of our demand is weddings and anniversaries and birthday parties and things like that. It's rare that we have somebody who comes in to do a large scale, like we just have a large scale presentation.
Just need to be able to see it.
Yeah.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, good visibility, good sound quality. And maybe it's more than one screen, like here. So folks can see it. But I don't know. We are still embroiled in that discussion about what is it that we need versus what is it that we want, that kind of thing.
Well, I think you've got the final say,
It's
so
about a $5,000 difference.
just order it. Whatever.
$5,000
Get what you want.
We could do a committee and put John in head of it.
Well, I think we're finished. It's 3:02. That's been 2 hours. I'm turning off the recorder.